we have two wonderful people on, Lowlidev and Goose. These guys, why don't you just tell us what you do?
Well, let me tell you what they do. I want to introduce them.
That works too.
They are like
thank
pillars.
God Pope is here.
In the community. These guys are literally the backbone of they represent. Now you guys sit back here for a second, because they represent a group of people that work like tirelessly. These are just two of a whole bunch of people that dedicate their knowledge and ability to code and work on these apps to make our lives easier. I don't know a single hardcore or player that plays Destiny a lot that doesn't use Ishtar Collective, DIM, Lowlidev's website when you were out there farming for what were the things in Warmind? You had to go out and find all the
nodes and latent memories.
So these guys put together some of the or helped put together some of the most amazing apps out there, and I have to personally thank you for the thousands of hours you have saved me in time
especially
and
on
energy.
PlayStation.
So
like
first, Goose is as part of he's one of the founding members and part of the backbone behind, and by no means the only developer behind DIM, Destiny Item Manager, which is a great application for moving around your stuff on Destiny. But that's just the basics that it does. It organizes your inventory, it helps build classes, it does all this stuff. It tracks all the you can search for things. They have a metadata, like is the gun good or not? There's all these things that they've put into the game that have made our lives better. And so thank you very much, Goose, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Great. Just happy to be here. This is a great show.
We should also mention for those watching the video, Goose's camera is in a different timeline.
Spot right?
Yeah. He's on a different. His computer is currently working on an algorithm to break the puzzle. Yes.
It's a multiverse version of Goose in the video. All right, so just keep that in mind.
Nobody snap. Nobody snap your hand.
He's going to contribute as much as he can. And our next guest is Lowlidev, and I remember running across your website when I was playing Warmind, and that was the first time I ran across something that you had created. But that isn't your first community created app, is it?
Yeah, no. I mean, I've actually been around before I actually did any apps. Like I've been around since like pre-DIM almost, because I mean. Back in those days, we were on the there's a forum on the forum group on the BungieNet, and it was like a place where all the developers sort of came together and talked about stuff. And yeah, it was at Dark Below. We heard about being able to move items, and there was a couple of us, trying to figure out how to get it to work.
So I want to ask you about that. You're like saying that on the Dark Below, a couple of you guys got together, and how did this community sort of form? How did you guys run into each other, and how did you start working? Because a lot of these are collective efforts. You guys are openly sharing what you're working on, the coding that you're working on, correct?
I mean, I'd say a lot of that's thanks to Rick here, because he's been, I suppose, a real pillar in getting folks together. I mean, we've got the Discord API, but we've also got the DIM Slack where, I mean, how many members has it got there now at the moment? It's a few.
We have about 110 individuals inside our Slack. One of the things that I've tried to do from the beginning is anytime I've seen someone develop an app or have an interest in developing it, they got a little skin in the game, I invite them to the DIM Slack where we can kind of collaborate. It's kind of like this NATO-esque environment where we have all these pillars of the community working together, trying to figure out how can we express the nodes, for example, or where can we get lore, so we're breaking apart the API, and a lot of people have a specific interest and they just bring it all together and it turns into beautiful code. So but I would say from the beginning, I would say a lot of the work that we have now is due to Lowlines, because he produced documentation where there was none in the very beginning. He formalized it and created the things that we read to learn more about the API.
I'm curious about any stories that you guys might have where you were working on your specific project, or somebody in the community was working on their specific project and needed the collective efforts to help solve a problem. Do you have any stories of that, or how you've come together to solve a problem?
Well, fun fact is there's a piece of code that's in DIM, and it is in a lot of other apps, including my website, and that's so everyone knows what the manifest is, that has like all the game data, you know, that people often try to data mine for stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the way that's stored is a bit complicated, and DIM had a solution, a bit of code that works, and they're just like, well, it's open source, use it. And you know, so there's like a bit of DIM in a lot of apps, and
there's a little bit of DIM in everybody, right?
Yeah.
DIM and the Irish, so it's all good.
I didn't expect a Godzilla reference. All right.
We really wanted to make sure that the community benefited from the work that we did. You know, like I said, from the beginning, DIM was always going to be free, and we were like, well, let's just share the code, and you know, what can grow from it. And we were solving hard problems in terms of authentication. How do we load the manifest data? How do we figure out the perk tree? You know, that was an early problem, trying to understand how perks were expressed in the data. It's weird in there. I mean, they do a good job, but you got to think about the complexity of talent grids back in D1. You know, when we were re-rolling for weapons, you know, there was these talent grids that were kind of already laid down. We had to kind of figure out how to express that in the UI. I mean, that's code that we shared with Ishtar Commander, you know, way back in the day. You know, so we gave that to Nigel, and that started his perk code. You know, so we definitely work with all the other, you know, Little Light. I mean, any other item managers out there, we share all of our code. You know, use it.
One of the things that I think is fantastic, and Lowly, this is directed towards you, is it seems like you are able to reconstruct the feel of Destiny's UI, especially the map, and take it and make it useful on a computer in a way that, you know, searching, and there's a ton more functionality in it. Can you walk us through what was your desire when you were officially getting into the project? Why did you start that website?
Well, I suppose it sort of goes back to my experience as well playing games. So before Destiny, I played a lot of Borderlands, especially Borderlands 2. And there were a lot of cool little, I suppose, side apps around. So I remember this one on my iPad. It had like all the maps, and it had like alt symbols that you could like check off. It was all manual, but I just thought it was really nice how you could have like this, you know, collection thing on a separate screen, manage it while playing the game. And when they announced the changes to the maps in for Destiny 2, I was just like, gotta you know, put these two things together and make something fun with it. But unfortunately, a lot of those graphics and that aren't output into the API, so I had to wait until, you know, they were available, you know, through those Reddits and that.
And you've been, it's my understanding also that this community on this Slack is also, you know, at times work directly with Bungie, and that Bungie's a supporter of the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, I mean, we all know the API guy, Vthorn. He's known on Reddit as he occasionally jumps in and does these amazing explanations of a particular problem that people have highlighted. And I don't know, you ever read any of his explanations, he just like, you know, he's really, really good. And the amount of work he does behind the scenes to make what we do a reality is amazing. Like the Mars maps, that didn't happen. That couldn't have happened without him. Like that was extra work that they did while working on Forsaken, to make it so that you could like check off which ones you had. Like that didn't exist until he sort of found a way to make it work. So, you know, I make the front end, but like nothing without the work he does on the APIs. And
yeah,
I can't stress that enough.
The checklist features too, right? Remember just before Forsaken when we had all that data available to show you what you've earned?
Yep.
And
yeah, that was extra work, right? I mean, that was all +1 stuff that they did to make it available for us. I mean, you know, there's V Thornhart's Edgar Verona on Reddit. You know, we have Hello Control. We used to have a guy named Tetron. I mean,
he did a lot of the authorization stuff to allow you to sign in instead of stealing their cookies.
Yeah. You know, but so I mean, you know, we have great participation from the Bungie.net team. They're in the Slack, and they're you know, it's a comfortable environment. We all know each other. You know, we got some ground rules where we, you know, take care of our Bungie guests. But they're, you know, very open. You know, they offer us wish lists. We just give them everything that we want, and then, you know, they'll kind of filter through it. And you know, it's really nice to have you know, a direct line to the people who are doing the work. You know, to ask questions when we have trouble. You know, to make sure that we're good curators of the API as well. We don't want to abuse it or use more resources than necessary. So, you know, that kind of level of feedback is very good for us. You know, we brought our refresh timer down from 5 minutes to 30 seconds after having, you know, consulted with V Thornhart. Yeah.
It's amazing how communicative they are, how open to like
awesome.
sharing information, actually working with changes.
That wasn't something that happened overnight either. Like that's something that sort of evolved over time. Like I remember it was like early on that forum I was talking about, the forum group, that was actually run by a guy called Dazarobo. He was a community person, and eventually it sort of the devs sort of joined in, you know, started talking, and it eventually sort of took over it, and then that evolved into the official APIs on GitHub with Destiny 2. So
can you give a timeline of when that began? Because I know you guys started, like you said, like when you could first transfer a weapon over, and like after Dark Below, like there was the beginnings of this stuff kind of rumbling with the API. What timeline happened to where the devs were like, oh, we should start focusing and helping with the community on this? Like, what, you know, was it the Taken King, or was it Rise of Iron? Like,
it was much further back than that.
Oh yeah.
But the actual official, you know, transfer, that was something that sort of happened with Destiny 2. So
okay,
I think prior to Destiny 2, we sort of, you know, it was sort of like there was like a forum discussion where like, we want to do this. What do you want to see in like an official sort of sense? You know, like what things need to be visible and that sort of stuff. And yeah, I mean, it was really good to sort of
would you say
see that evolve over time.
Would you say they kind of like spec'd out what ultimately would be beneficial for Destiny 2 prior to that then? All right, I mean, during that time they were speccing out what would benefit your guys' apps for the release of Destiny 2?
Well, first and foremost, the APIs is always first for the companion app.
Right.
It used to also be for the Bungie website, but the app's sort of the main consumer of it. But you know, they obviously wanted, because they know we're going to use it anyway, regardless of. So you know,
yeah,
make sure it does what it needs as well. So yeah, I mean, it was a good discussion, and like it's so good now that with the GitHub, because you can post issues and it's like a more proper like organized system, as opposed to a forum where everyone just posts their problems, and and then it gets lost in a sea of like messages.
Right.
Whereas GitHub's made for, you know, when there's an issue with like, or bugs, and they can get tracked and then followed up and that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, so you got to think all this stuff was really emergent in D1, right? I mean, the API showed up, House of Wolves-ish, you know, 1.1.1, and you know, we grabbed the cookie and figured out how to start moving things for you, and yeah, it was, you know, it was safe, but it was kind of like it doesn't feel comfortable, you know. And so, you know, we kept, you know, pinging them.
I was nervous. I was nervous. People talking about losing the Gallahorn in that transfer, being like, "Where to go?"
Oh yeah.
So let me tell you,
that.
The biggest thing was when I was building the version of DIM you're using, and I was moving my Gallahorn through it for the first few times. I was like, okay, you know. So I mean, every time someone tells me something, is it okay? I'm like, I have moved so much gear through this thing. It's fine. You know, it'll be good. Never lost anything ever in the app.
Yet.
Yeah, most times
okay,
when
so
something disappears, it's just that the API doesn't properly, you know.
Well, do you
remember
right.
when people would figure out that if you deleted something in the game but moved something in DIM, it would slide another thing under it, the reticle in the game, and then it would delete that. Okay, and that's how people were doing things like dropping their weapon.
Oh, interesting.
You know that?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That was the trick, right? So what people didn't know is that they were moving stuff in DIM while deleting something in game. You can like wipe out all your motes of light. You know, there'd be people like, I just lost 1,000 motes of light. I'm like, don't move stuff while you're doing delete operations.
I mean, it sounds like Bungie is super supportive of the work you're doing in the community, and I think that's awesome. But I'm curious about the challenge that they have. There's two questions that I have about some of the challenges they have with being so open. I think that one of the problems is data miners, right? And people finding out secrets of the game. Does any of the work that they're doing to keep your access open and your avenues clear, does that affect in any way data miners' abilities to get into this information, or are those two different systems?
You want to answer that one or me?
You.
So something they introduced, I think, fairly early on is redacted entries. So that was something, because I think after like maybe Destiny 1 beta, those database, something like Destiny DB or something, they had like all the information up there, like the entire database up there. So they had to start redacting information, and at first it was very broken, I suppose, because it was just like get all that information off, and so that way it's not getting leaked. But now it's a bit more structured, so like there's like a property that says redacted true or false, and that way developers can sort of look at the data and say, oh, this is redacted, so therefore I'll display like a
it's unfortunate when they do that. They remove a lot of information from the items. Like when you got Thunderlord and it was classified or redacted, we didn't know the light level of it. In the past, we couldn't move those items. Now we can actually
move them. That's been super nice.
Yeah, now we can move them. You just can't equip them, I believe. But we can get
close
them
enough.
You can't equip them.
It's way better than
out of the tower.
not being able to get them.
Yeah. So one of the things that we asked for the future is to get more get more metadata onto the item, even though it's classified, because knowing the light level doesn't impact the lore. So we're definitely communicating our wish list.
What is on the wish list?
Yeah. What do you got going on? What's the next things up on the pipeline for DIM and Lowlidev?
Go ahead.
Well, for me, it's sort of there's a lot of stuff that you can display on the maps, but I've end up having to do a lot of it manually. So I'm trying to rely more on the data that's in the API, so that way I can like push updates more often and not have to go through and like doing stuff like the eggs. You can't get around it. You have to manually add those because they don't exist like on the maps. But stuff like, for instance, you have a quest line. You know, I want to be able to bring that information and display it in a way that's meaningful. And has anyone used like braytech.org at all? They've got this really cool view called the This Week. I really like what's sort of been happening with that, and I'd sort of want to sort of incorporate something like that more, where you can sort of see, you know, what you have to do as opposed to just, you know, like checklists and triumphs and that. But the maps has been like in development for like 8 months or so. So it's sort of hit that point where it's like, if I keep adding more stuff, it gets a bit, you know, like, am I going to break something, or, you know, so you have to sort of figure out, you know, take a step and figure out. So it sort of takes time, but yeah. And there's this other little thing I've been working on that I've sort of tried to talk about, and that's where you're tracking changes to your profile, and that's anything from like items to progressions to, you know, and the idea is that you can track it within like 30 or so seconds to sort of build like a change log, and then you could then take that data and use it to do interesting things, like maybe you wanted to calculate how fast you were gaining exotic engrams during an hour or something cool. But it's like, it's sort of like, it's an idea. I'm trying to get it to put it together and then sort of saying, well, what can I do with it? And one of the things is, you know, could it be used in streams, like as a Twitch extension or something? But
can I give you an item for the wish list? So maybe it's not on the visual part of the UI that we have in game, but somewhere in there, those vague terms they use to describe guns and armor, there's got to be a number behind them. I wonder if that's in the API, and if DIM or your website could find a way of providing that in numeric form instead of in these bars with or general terms.
Advanced tooltips, basically, instead of increases damage.
Yeah, what does that mean? What does increases damage mean?
Increase damage while in the forge. But how much damage?
But we want to know numbers.
I mean, that stuff's not available. I mean, you know,
it's not in there. It's not
no,
in the API.
It's all calculated, and you know,
there's a lot of stuff which is actually just in the form of like scripts. So it's very hard for Vthorn to like translate that to like a raw number. So it's like if you've used the 3D viewer at all, and you've looked at some of the more recent models like bows and that, they look absolutely crap because well, that's all done with a shader now. So, and that's code that I don't have. So all I've got is the models, you know, and that's pretty much the same thing with a lot of the data in the APIs, is that it's what can actually be scraped in a meaningful form. So
yeah, I mean, if you know, when you look at the item details, you'll see like magazine size, and it's like some weird number like 72. You know, what does that mean, right? Or if aim assist is 23, like, well, what does that mean? You know, and so like the scale is relative to the item type, and then even within certain item types, there's subclasses, and so it's, you know, it's the world of the designers and how they kind of script all that into Destiny, and it just doesn't come out in the API at all. So we can just give you numbers. You figure them out. You know, we'll let the testers like, you know, Mercules and Fallout, you know, figure out how to, you know,
jump into private matches, do calculations.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, look, count those damages.
All right. Yeah.
And with all this time you guys spend making these community apps that are free to the community, how do you guys monetize this in any way? Because I don't have to pay to use DIM, and I don't have to pay to use Lowlidev.
Wait, you haven't been paying?
I mean,
we've monetized you. We've turned you into batteries.
The thing to sort of point out is when you use things like the APIs, you have to agree to a license agreement that, you know, or terms of use. of how you use it. And one of those things is you have to be very careful about how you monetize things, because, like, for instance, some, you know, Ishtar could not make that app and then put it up for $5 on iTunes, because that would be wrong and breaking that terms of use. So
the license agreement for the using the API, right?
Yeah,
I sense by that smile that this has happened.
Not to us. I mean, there's been, you know, speculation like, you know, well, if I make a free app and then I make an app that's $5, the people, it's free, anyone can download it, but the $5 one is people, you know, supporting me. Is that, you know, breaking terms of, you know, and so we avoid all that gray stuff and just say, go for it. I mean, these are passion projects. These are projects for us to learn how to be better programmers, developers, architects, to learn how to do React development, Angular, to be better designers. You know, I like building communities, you know, but there's like a very small community of developers. But I mean, I like, you know, bringing people together to be beautiful things. You know, I mean, it's we all get something out of it. But at the end, I think for most of us, these are hobbies. You know, the result is a richly lived life.
So how do I get DIM and Lowlidev? Do I need to go to you know, some BitTorrent and download it, or how does one get this? If I'm excited, I've been playing Destiny the wrong way all this time.
If you're not using DIM, you are playing Destiny the wrong way.
It's my ritual, man.
On the tower are beautiful.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But if I can help you see one last sunset.
Yes. Thank you. How does one get access to DIM?
I just want to say I open DIM before I open Destiny every time I play.
Yeah.
Most
Destiny.
of the time.
Yeah.
Me too.
Absolutely.
Well, you can go to destinyitem.manager.com and that'll take you to our web app, which you can run on your phone. The web app runs great on Safari and Chrome on Android and iOS devices, and you can even save it to your home screen, and it has a very app-like experience. So,
nice.
DestiniyitemManager.com.
Isn't there also a widget on Google Chrome?
There's a little bookmark you can add to Chrome, so you can see the logo. And the best thing happened last week when one of the other developers came up and said, "Hey, I got a support ticket at work, and I saw a DIM icon in the Chrome browser. There's more of them out there." You know?
That's why
there's
I
so
always
many.
see pictures on like Twitter of like somebody in a business meeting, and there's like rows of
like
people
little
with their
DIM
laptops, and then one guy's got DIM open like in the front row.
That was the best feeling ever, right? That was like really early in like probably May of 2018. And, you know, someone just posted this thing on Reddit like, oh, you know, there's a guardian in the wild. And you know, them using DIM was like a really flush feeling like, wow, you know, we're making something tangible that's kind of, you know, touching people in ways, you know, they can still extend that experience, you know, beyond their couch, right? They're doing it at work and moving their gear and getting ready to go home and play. You know, and that was just a really great feeling.
Well, I know
that's
that
awesome.
all this time that you guys are spending coordinating with all these other programmers and putting out the products that you guys put out to make our lives easier and allow us to have more game time significantly takes away from your ability to play the game you love more often as well. So for myself, I would like to say thank you very much. And I got to take care of that.